Hey guys, thanks for tuning in for my second video. Today I wanted to talk about something that I've kind of noticed, but I recently listened to a podcast with Seth Godin, and he really went into detail and talked about this a lot. And so I just wanted to kind of share that with you, and I'll also leave a link to the podcast in the description of this video so you can listen to that as well, because I think there's a lot of really important points that he makes in the specific podcast I'm talking about. And what I'm talking about today is how the internet has guided us towards the long tail, and how with that journey of like moving towards the long tail over broad trends, we've allowed for new segmented very niche news and information websites and news sources. And kind of the trend here, I guess the way to look at it is the internet itself, although it allowed for things like CNN.com and the NewYorkTimes.com, Wall Street Journal, all that stuff to move online and for people to access it on the internet. That's not really the bigger trend. The bigger trend is, yeah, those things are going to exist, but because of the way that people access information and look for information, new sources pop up based on what people are looking for. So in 2000 on the internet, I might have gone to AOL.com to get my news. But now, there's feminist news, there's super far right conservative news, there's Christian Science news, there's different news sites for everybody based on their interests and what they're searching for. So if I'm searching Google, I'm no longer just going to type in news. I'm going to type in tech news for millennials, or shopping news for middle-aged moms, and there's going to be something there because the internet has not only allowed for the digital parts of existing media, like the New York Times to go online, and for television stations to launch YouTube channels. All that has been allowed by the internet. But I think the bigger trend that people need to realize is everybody's kind of falling into their own silo of information. So the fact that I'm a 20-something male, I'm going to be in a different silo from someone who, say, is 75 years old, and my grandma, for example, she's going to fall into a different information silo. So it's not just news sites. It's not, I read this news, she reads this news. It's, I consume information from, these news sites, but I access it from my Facebook feed that consists of a bunch of people who think like me. That's what Facebook is going to show me, is my friends with similar ideas and similar beliefs. That's where I get my information. It gives it to me from my Google News feed, which is going to be different from someone else's Google News feed, and they get their information from their circle of friends on Twitter or wherever, and that just creates these kind of pockets of information and pockets of news. And what that means is that basically anyone, so I could create a new news site that was so segmented, it's so specific that I, one, would have no competitors, and two, the people that read it are not going to come from all over the place. I'm going to know exactly who they are. And I think the reason this is a problem is because, and we've definitely seen this already, is if people are getting their news in these super segmented places and from very specific sites based on their interests or their demographics or their psychographics or any of that stuff, people are going to have a hard time agreeing on what is even newsworthy, because it depends on what you're focused on and what you're interested in. And we've seen that people are now able to get their information from these different news sites and these different sources based on their interests and what niche they fall into. And so they never even come into contact with news that may be conflicting to their ideals or maybe not interesting to their religious group. I mean, it's very specific, and what it leads to is people being isolated from information rather than being, shown more information or the full range. And so this is allowing for new things to pop up, new cultural trends to become super relevant and make big changes in the market. But the problem is the places that are making changes are super specific. And so in the past, when, let's say, Facebook launched, everybody can open a Facebook account. Everybody wants a Facebook account. Everybody uses Facebook to communicate with their friends. But the next big company or service or product or just cultural phenomenon might only apply to people who are in high school, who are interested in basketball, who, like new cultural things arise. And it's not that these movements aren't culturally relevant on a large scale, because they are. There are, hundreds of thousands to millions of high schoolers in the United States who are probably interested in basketball. But where I kind of get iffy with this is if I want to start a cultural change, or if I want, if I'm interested in spreading a message, it's easier to do because I can just reach specific groups of people. But if I want to spread it to the masses, I'm not going to be very successful because, everybody has their own silo of stuff they're interested in, of stuff that appeals to them, stuff that is focused on making those people happy or feel good or whatever. So if I just have a broad, general, shitty, watered down message, I'm not going to be able to reach people in a way that I probably could have, say, 20 to 50 years ago. So that's just kind of my thoughts on how we can address the long tail, how we need to look at opportunities, how we need to look at marketing, how we need to look at messaging in this new world where everyone has their option. Everyone has their places that they can rely on to deliver the message that they're looking for. So if you're not specific in your messaging to them, it's one, they're not going to pay attention to it, and two, it's not going to resonate with them, and they're not going to care about it. So as marketers, we have to really narrow down our focus. We have to narrow down our messaging that we're using, and in the long term, it's going to help us because our customers are going to form their own communities, and those communities are going to be very small. And the buying intent in those people's minds is going to be really high, because if one person in that small community buys something, the rest of them are probably going to follow behind, because that's what people do. So I don't know, just kind of spew in here, but I think there's a lot to think about, and I just encourage you to think about it and kind of let me know your thoughts. I'd like to hear what you've thought and what you've realized about moving from general and kind of broad news and information to very specific and very tailored messages, news, information, etc. So let me know what you think in the comments. Like this video if you made it to the end. Thanks.